Hi, I'm here today with Dennis Lipka, Administrator of the WRTA, Worcester Regional Transit Authority. I appreciate your coming in and tell me a little bit about what's the service area, first of all, of the
Okay,
WRTA.
I'll give you a thumbnail sketch of the Worcester Regional Transit Authority. Central location is the city of Worcester, and there are 36 communities, towns around Worcester that we serve. We go all the way from Barre in the north to Southbridge, Webster, Millbury, Douglas,
Wow.
around it. So it's and we go out to Spencer and all the way out to Northborough.
Okay.
So we cover a large geographic area. We have 28 fixed routes, which operate as a spoke and hub system out of the city of Worcester, out to as far as Southborough. We come out to Shrewsbury, West Boylston, and Webster.
Okay, great.
And Spencer.
How many people use your system every year?
We provide right now in this year about 3.3 million rides per year. We operate 7 days a week from about ballpark 5:30, 6 a.m. all the way to about 9 p.m., a little bit later on some of the routes. We have Saturday and Sunday service, which is unique. Many RTAs operate only on a 6-day or a 5-day schedule.
Sure.
In addition to providing the fixed route service, we provide paratransit services for disabled folks, and that's on-demand, door-to-door service. It's now currently operated using a online reservation system and payment system, so it's very efficient. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that gets those people to medical, social, educational, work opportunities, whatever they need, and it's the most expensive ride we provide. Fixed route service rides are about $7.75 per ride, total cost. Paratransit rides are about $22 per ride. Some are more expensive depending on where you go. The third component of our system is the Council on Aging's, of which we have agreements with 10 communities and SCM Elderbus, where we provide the base capital equipment and some subsidies for drivers and operating costs. And for many people in the area, that's what they see as the WRTA. They see the blue and red vans with the WRTA owned, operated by Shrewsbury Council on Aging. And those typically operate from 8 or so in the morning till 5 or 6 in the afternoon. And right now there's some diversity and based on population needs and everything else. So some Council on Aging's operate a little bit longer, some operate fewer hours a day, but essentially it's a Monday through Friday operation.
Okay. And for all this, you're funded how? Not enough is what I read a lot.
It's complex. You know, the first component you have to appreciate is all the funding in Massachusetts is provided by the state legislature under the transportation funding component of the bill. There's about $1.5 billion for transportation. Right now, 86 million of it goes to regional transportation. The balance goes to the MBTA. Right. There's a lot of discussion about shouldn't there be a little bit more for regional transit?
And I guess that's what I mean, not enough.
We cover 55% of the state and get nowhere near that kind of percentage of money. Most of the money is spent inside of essentially Route 128. Commuter rail comes out to Leominster and Worcester and some other places, you know, to the South Shore and the like. But again, the bulk of the money is the MBTA rail and transit system, which is complex, and that's a separate issue. The way 47% of our funds, right now the budget for the WRTA is a little over $26 million a year. 47% of it comes from state contract assistance, which is broken up into 1/3 payments distributed by the state to us throughout the fiscal year. About 25%, a little bit more than that actually, is federal operating assistance. And then the balance of it comes from the rest of the money, the other 27% comes from local assessments. Every city and town within the region pays a certain assessment, local assessment, based on the service they get, the size of the population, and a number of other factors, and that constitutes the big bulk of that. Riders, fares, essentially, account for about 8 or 9% of the funds that we receive.
Okay.
And then there's miscellaneous. We have advertising, which we do on buses and things, and we're trying to expand that. But overall, it's a system that is very dependent on somebody, a legislator, a lot of ways, making the decision on what we get, and that dictates how we can provide the service and how much service we can provide. Across the country, most of the country is served by regional transit, and very little is served by what people think of as transit, like MBTA systems. Massachusetts is a tough spot for transit because the MBTA is about the 5th largest transit system in the United States, and we're a relatively small state, so people say, how much can regional transit be? But, you know, if this were Texas, it'd be a different question.
Sure,
But,
sure.
you know, really, you're in a situation where there are 15 regional transit authorities.
Okay.
And they range in size from very small, like the Berkshires, and then there are transit authorities on Nantucket and the Cape and the Islands.
I don't think of that.
Yeah, well, but they're all through the rest of the state. And the two largest are the Pioneer Valley Transit Authority, which is essentially Western Massachusetts, Amherst, Northampton, Springfield,
Okay.
and then the Worcester Regional Transit Authority.
Okay. What are your top couple of challenges right now?
Well, I'll give you the rundown from my interimship, which lasted for 4 months, and then to where I am now, midway through my first contract year. First objective was to get the electric buses. We have a 6 all-electric buses, and we've had issues with the charger and things and the operation of those vehicles. It's been a battle to get that charger fixed and updated, but we're there, and we're now back to running 4 of the electrics on a regular basis. We have 2 that we keep in spare because battery-operated vehicles need to be charged, and we have a system that has overnight charging at the maintenance and operation facility, but because of the technology that we have to charge them on the platform at the hub as they loop around. So we have to operate in a narrow range of battery charge to get the most efficiency out of electrics. Most people don't realize that with an electric bus, the biggest demand on the vehicle is not moving it, it's heating it and cooling it.
Oh, sure.
So, and today we'd be air conditioning. A month ago we were heating. And heating and cooling drain the batteries pretty quickly.
Oh, interesting.
So that's one target. The second thing is that I focused on an asset reallocation approach. We had a number of routes that were grossly underperforming, and when I came on as administrator, I said that I would hold the fares at $175, not have a fare increase, and I was opposed to doing any reductions in service, but I would condition that on the notion that I was going to take underperforming service and put it to where we have people that want to go places, and that's what we did. We looked at routes that had very low or no ridership and retasked them. We took routes that were going to industrial parks that no longer had a lot of employees, that had gone to warehouse merchandising, or the businesses had changed, people had moved, whatever. But we did a complete system review, and the 22nd, we're putting out the revised service for the WRTA, which includes for the very first time a Park Ave route that goes the length of Park Ave from the Greendale Mall all the way to Webster Square. That's important because it interlines with 7 of our other routes, and it doesn't go to the hub. So that this is for the first time you'll be able to go across the city without coming into downtown Worcester. We've also increased the frequency of some of the more popular weekend service, extended the hours a little bit, and we've increased some service on routes that we've had quite a bit of ridership on, and we think more frequency there would be helpful. So from my point of view, we're rebuilding the system, retasking it, and going forward, looking for other opportunities to expand the service.
That's great, particularly outside of the city, I think.
Well, one of the routes that we extended is out to Southborough, and we're going out further into Southborough, almost to the Sturbridge border.
Oh, good.
There's a store, the Big Bunny, which
Oh,
is
sure.
sort of a,
Yep.
well, we're turning around there. And,
good.
And we're looking at some micro transit opportunities where we can interconnect the northern part of Worcester County with other transit authorities as well as Worcester.
Oh, that's terrific.
So it's an exciting time, and I can't let the opportunity go by to say that we're not worried about how we're going to address the transit needs when the Polar Park opens.
I was going to ask you about that, and
spring
I know we only have a few minutes left, but we've had some guests in the past and we've mentioned it, one of the gaps to me is in that plan is the number of parking spaces for all the building they're going to do in that area. To me seems crazy little. A very small number compared to what I think the needs are, which means transit would be the way to come into the city or across the city of Worcester to go to a ball game and all the other fine attractions that they're building and office spaces, but they're not building nearly enough parking space. That's my own.
Okay, first,
so
from a transit point of view, hooray.
There you go. So for you, this is good news, so long as we can address the cost of it.
A little story. Very first meeting I had with the city manager, the very first thing we talked about was the Polar Park and the development and how transit has to be ready. And I purposely took that meeting a little bit later in my tenure so I could put together what I felt was an appropriate transit response, an action plan that addressed a number of those issues. And when I looked at the plan, I pointed out to the city manager and his design team that on the other side of the railroad track, they had this big white spot. And I said, you realize this is Union Station in the WRTA hub. I think you should broaden this Google map picture out a little bit and include us, because I have 28 routes of fixed route service that come into the hub that could connect parking lots all around Worcester and bring people right to that park. The north entrance to Polar Park is 800 feet from my office building.
Oh, wow.
It's
okay.
a 1-minute walk.
Wow.
And the focus from transit's point of view should be Union Station, and the hub is the way to get to the ballpark.
Yes.
Under the bridge to Green Street, and then to the right, and you're at the Polar Park.
And I think the piece they're forgetting is that if you're from Framingham, Westboro, Douglas, and you decide we're going to go to a ball game, you're going to come in once, not be able to get a parking space.
Correct.
Much less deal with whatever they're going to do with Kelly Square, but that's my own personal bias. And they're never going to come back.
Right.
So it's going to become a very much a in the city crowd, because people from outside the city aren't going to do that a second time unless they have an option.
Our task at the Worcester Regional Transit Authority is to make sure that we're ready for that we advertise and do a much better job marketing our services and that we can provide, and get people to realize the value of the service that we provide, and that the service is clean, it's efficient, it's safe. You can park for free in lots of different places, and for a short walk, you can get jumping on a bus for $1.75.
There we go.
We're in. But we're also looking at a change in the fare system and some other things to make the experience of getting to Polar Park a lot easier. We may have fare-free afternoons, operate the system without fares, so nobody has to worry about whether I have the right ticket or need to buy a ticket or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're looking for promotional things. We're working with a media company that's going to be working with the people who are going to operate Polar Park. We're going to do some radio spots. We're doing them now.
Oh, that's great.
So my pitch to the city at the end of the day was, we have 18 months to get ready. I need to put a lot of things into play right now to make sure that everything works as well as it can work when the park opens. We know we're going to have some things that we didn't appreciate, couldn't figure out until you see how people use it. But there are many things that we should be ready for ahead of time. And one of the things that we're doing is we're recrafting the service of the WRTA, particularly in the city, toward that point. And there'll be service changes, 3 or 4 at least, between now and the opening of the park, that will be dedicated to tweaking service to make that much more functional.
So beyond Polar Park, which I think, and that whole, the rest of the construction in the city, people coming to Worcester for any of the attractions and destinations, I'm glad to see that there's conversation going on, because I think that's a huge issue that nobody's really addressing, so I'm glad you're at least addressing it. What else, the other question I had was about the Research Bureau that just came out and suggested maybe the system would be, more efficient or whatever if fares were eliminated, which I guess has been done in some cities, but I'm not as familiar with how other cities can do that. Is that something that you're thinking about? What would be the advantages, disadvantages?
Well, first, just to wrap up on the Polar Park real quick, there's a large team of people that work with me that we're all doing the planning. So
Good.
It's not like me alone thinking about the problem. So I want to make sure that you appreciate that it's the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, the City of Worcester, there's the transportation folks, and the Worcester Regional Transit Authority are looking at it. One of the things that we're also looking at is our outmoded fare collection system. And before the Worcester Regional Research Bureau started its fare study, we were in the process of beginning our own internal process of looking at other alternatives to our current system of fare collection. And the Worcester Research Bureau's project essentially was to look at the WRTA today as it operates. Would a fare-free system be possible to implement? The answer in the study was yes, because they're looking at our current fare collection system, which is the same one that's used by the MBTA, and they have the same problems that we do, and that is that it's not really a very good system. It's unreliable. It collects only 70% of the fares. It was never designed to handle the variety of coinage that we're running through it. Right now it's nickels, dimes, and quarters, but it's still very inefficient. It's a mechanical system. It's got a lot of problems. It's not very flexible. We can't do off-peak rates for people. Okay. We can't do discounts for seniors. We are also tied to the Charlie card and the problems that represents.
Oh, okay.
So it's not the best fare system in the world. It's costly to maintain, costly to keep operational, and it's inefficient. So if you look at our fare revenues, which total about $3.3 million, we spend well over $1.5 million to keep the equipment, staff, the coin counting machines, the mechanics, the contract with Scheit Bachmann. Wow. It's an expensive way to collect fares. So from the perspective of the WRTA today and how it collects fares, the differential between doing away with the fare collection system and our current rate of fare collection at $3.3 million is about $1.2 million, $1.3 million. And it's reasonable that we would be able to raise that money by assessing businesses, the colleges, or someone finding another revenue source to make that up and make the system fare-free.
Okay.
The attractiveness in fare-free systems is that it takes away a lot of anxiety about getting on a bus. You don't know what the fare system is. You don't know if you got the right card, enough money on it.
Absolutely.
All those things. Do you have enough change? Most transit authorities, when they start to fool around with fare collection systems, the very first objective usually is to take cash off the bus, make everything a card, a swipe card, a pass card, or a tap card, a cell phone, whatever, but get away from cash. So that's the first step. But in some cases, there have been people who have experimented with a fare-free system. San Francisco, the inner city, BART has some fare-free, and there are some others.
Oh, okay.
And they have been successful in some respects and not successful in others. Fare-free systems, you'll probably get more people on the vehicle. For example, we had a loop that we used to run from the new hub out to City Hall and around a few spots on Main Street in Worcester, it operated at no cost. And when we had it at no cost, we had lots and lots of riders on it. We found out that we had a little problem with that service because if we provide free service on a route, then we have to have a complimentary ADA service that has to be provided free as well, which was very expensive. So we then imposed the regular fare on the hub loop, and the ridership went to zero.
Isn't that interesting?
And other regional transit authorities in Massachusetts have done the same thing. They had shuttle service to the Solomon Pond Mall, or they had free service to MBA parking stations. The minute they imposed the fare, the service disappeared. Ridership went away. So there's some connections there that you can make that may not be 100% solid. But the Worcester Research Bureau study, and I've talked to Tom when he was doing it, and I've spoken with him after, is a valuable piece of analysis to look at. We're looking at it in our own fare study, but we're also looking at finding more effective fare systems that will do a better job at collecting fares, take electronic media, recognize the fact that people do a ton of business now on cell phones with apps. We currently don't support very much of that activity, and we think that's a better way to go initially. I mean, we're in the early stages of the study, so we'll see. But if our fare collection rate were closer to 100%, and it was a lot more, the fare collection system was easier to use and more reliable, we would be looking at revenues in the range of $5.5 million.
Oh, that's a big difference.
So, and an operating cost of less than $1 million.
Okay.
So looking at replacing $4.5 million of revenue is a whole different question than $1.2 million in revenue.
Yeah.
Last but not least, our consultant on our fare box study has said that some of the properties that have gone to fare-free systems have had problems with other issues, social issues, people riding the bus because they have nowhere else to go.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true.
And they become de facto interim homeless shelters. And that could be a problem. Worcester does have, as all urban areas
and
do.
I was going to say, a lot of communities that you serve, that would be
potentially have.
Yeah, that would be.
And the real problem is that if we offered fare-free service on the fixed route, we would have to offer fare-free ADA paratransit services. And again, the ride of on a paratransit is much more expensive. Some of those are provided by private providers like Yellow Cab, not only WRTA vehicles, but those rides, because they're door-to-door, are in the range of $22. So we'd be losing a lot more in fare revenue, even in this current, from the fare boxes, than that includes. So it's a more complex question than just take the fares off and it'll all work like a charm.
And I think that's one thing as we wrap up today. One of the things I've learned, at least, a lot more complex, a lot many more issues than anybody really understands, I think, unless they really get into the nuts and bolts of it. So I appreciate your coming by today and sharing some of that information with people. And it can be a head scratcher for those of us who aren't intimately knowledgeable about transit, but this sheds some light, I think, and I'm mostly glad that you and the city of Worcester are thinking about how people from the city and outside the city are going to come into all the great stuff that's going on downtown, but how do you get there? So thank you for coming and sharing that information today, and we'll be right back. Hoping that we treat everybody today with respect, tolerance, and kindness. Thanks for joining us. Till next time.